The Electoral Commission of South Africa has said that there are no constitutional mechanisms to postpone the upcoming local government elections beyond 90 days, with the only possible avenue being amending the Constitution. IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Masego Sheburi joins us now to give us a little bit more details on their readiness to hold elections. Good evening. Good to have you with us tonight.
Good evening.
Evan, is it still the position of the IEC that elections can still be held this year?
Preparations for an election commence at least 18 to 24 months ahead of a voting day. This is so because the IEC is expected to stand ready to conduct elections within 90 days whenever those elections are called. The elections for the term of office of the current term of councils expires in August the 3rd, and 90 days reckoned from that date gives us an outer date of the 1st of November in which election must be held. That is the window period that is known to us, that is known to all electoral stakeholders. Beyond the 90-day period, we are entering into uncharted territory because the Constitution is firm on its limit of a term. It is also firm in that there are no transitional mechanisms if an election is not held within that 90-day period.
Yeah. The opposition parties in parliament, well, at least we heard from a statement from the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema, that he will be engaging with other parties with a view to want to postpone these elections, saying, well, the choice is not necessarily that they will not be held, but they can be consolidated and be held with the national government elections when they happen. Is that a possibility?
We have received the representation of the party, including the UDM, and we have considered those in our normal course with liaison with the political parties. But from a constitutional entity, we must act within the law as it currently stands. And as I had said, the law is very clear that an election must be held within 90 days of the term expiring. On our part, we are preparing on the basis of the law as it currently stands. If there are any changes, we will fall in line and adjust our plans accordingly. But for now, we are planning on the basis of the Constitution as it currently stands.
Yeah. Your planning, does it factor in that there is a pandemic that I suppose has made it impossible for normal political activity to be carried out, normal political campaigning to be carried out during this time? And how does that affect the work that you're doing? Never mind the normal political activity, you also have a huge infrastructure that you need to put in place to ensure the safety of the people. We still don't have a proper vaccination program in place. It has been delayed, and there is a real threat of a third wave.
Indeed, the elections will require us to balance two exceedingly important rights. The first being the right to public health for the citizens and voters, as well as the right of citizens and residents in municipalities to be represented in municipal councils. So in preparing for these elections, we have put in a number of measures that we've discussed with political parties, that we have tested in at least 2 by-elections, and we have 2 further by-elections to test those public health measures. We are also in discussion with the Department of Health to take counsel on what they project the pandemic to behave and the trajectory of the pandemic. And therefore, our plans, out of necessity, must cater for those public health measures to ensure that voting stations and electoral activities do not become a platform for the further spread of the pandemic.
What is required for elections to be free and fair?
Among the key things is that there should be open political space so that political parties can canvass support in conditions of relative openness. We must be able to register voters. We must be able to mount education campaigns. Political parties must have space to campaign, whether it be face-to-face or using any other modern ways of campaigning. The environment must also be conducive for the holding of free and fair elections, in that all contestants have almost an equitable opportunity to canvass voters, and that the Electoral Commission can prepare without any hindrances that places the freeness and fairness of the election in jeopardy.
And that's key, isn't it? That there should be free campaigning and parties should be able to interact with their voters. Now, you're talking about parties that probably will have support in rural areas of South Africa where there is no connectivity. How are they going to interact with those voters? And therefore, do you not stand a chance of having these elections, local elections, challenged as being not free and fair?
You will recall that last year we had approached the Electoral Court to ask for relief in that the date of by-election should be postponed, principally because the regulation then did not allow for free movement of persons. They also did not allow for free political events and campaigns. With the country reverting to alert level 1, there has been a opening up of the political space, albeit with certain restriction. Even with those restrictions, we think that under alert level 1 and in the context of a pandemic, there is reasonable space for campaigns, there is reasonable space for free movement, and we think with appropriate adjustments, elections can still be held.
What would it take, for example, to have the Commission consider synchronization to the 2024 elections?
Obviously, Parliament will have to take a decision to synchronize those elections and amend the laws that govern all the elections in the country. On our part, our interest would be whether synchronizing those elections result in convenience to a voter, results in pushing down the cost of running elections. Our principal consideration is ease of voting on the part of the voter, whether the voters can still vote on an informed basis, because anything that makes the voting process more complex or anything that mystifies the translation of votes into seats is not good for democracy. So if the rationalization of election can happen in circumstances where it does not place additional burdens on the voter, it is easier for the voter to understand. We can run a voter education to explain to voters how to vote and how their vote translates into seats. By all means, with the necessary adjustments to the law, the Electoral Commission, as I said earlier on, will fall in line.
Right. Now, with this being, I suppose, a consideration not just for the economic freedom fighters, but I believe the UDM has also proposed the issue and some other parties, would this be an easy process to achieve, this amending of the rules and the laws?
I think the Parliament would have to have a greater say to indicate whether it is possible in the current environment to change the laws in order that this election can take place on the same day in 2024. Considering that there is already a process underway to amend the Electoral Act to give effect to the order of the Constitutional Court that demanded that individuals should be allowed to participate in national and provincial elections. It is not insurmountable, but it will take a whole lot of coordination and effort on all part of stakeholders to ensure that those elections happen on the day as constitutionally mandated.
And what would be the implications? I mean, as you said, that you've already started with the work of preparation. Has money already been spent? Has material already been prepared in terms of technology? I suppose voting material could not have been prepared by this time. But also, what level of manufacturing has already gone into preparing for a possibility of either August or November?
For the local government elections that must be held this year, we are at an advanced stage. We have already procured the majority of supplies that we require to run a general voter registration. We have, in certain instances, already placed orders for the material that we require to use at voting stations. We have finalized a network of voting stations, including the choice of the venue at which we will locate our voting stations. We have begun the process of online recruitment of electoral staff, and shortly we will start rolling out training to prepare those recruits to run the registration process as well as the elections. We are finalizing our campaign, which will include both the use of media, be they digital media, radio and TV, in order to enthuse the South African public to go out and register to vote and remain engaged with the public affairs of their country. So from that perspective of planning and logistics, we are on course for an election that must be held no later than the 1st of November.
But my question is more around, will that constitute a loss or fruitless expenditure, or that investment that you have made is an investment that can still be good in 2024?
If a decision is taken early enough that the election must not proceed, we can then adjust our plans and, where necessary, renegotiate with those suppliers where we have placed orders for a later delivery of those materials. But as I said, for this election, we are planning on the basis of the current scheme that an election must happen by the 1st of November, and for that reason, we must stand ready at least 18 months before that date.
IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Masego Sheburi, I appreciate your time and thank you very much for joining us tonight here on the News Feed Late Night.